Now, Paul Ryan has a strange fixation on killing the social safety net. Even back in his college days, when he used to hang out with his bros, slam beers, and dream about stepping on poor people. Now, with the passage of Trump's tax cuts, which, of course, blow a $1.5 trillion hole in the budget, Paul Ryan is now laying the groundwork for being able to achieve that dream. Now, earlier this month, Washington Post quoted Ryan as, quote, ready to cut entitlements. During an interview on Ross Kaminsky's talk radio show, he said, quote, we're going to have to get back next year at entitlement reform, which is how you tackle the debt and deficit. Healthcare entitlements such as Medicare and Medicaid are the big drivers of the debt, so we spend more time on the healthcare entitlements because that's really where the problem lies, fiscally speaking. No. The problem lies with you and your party. You guys just passed a tax bill whose benefits, 83% of the benefits go to the top 1%. And again, giant hole in the deficit. And now, this year, you're looking at increasing spending to the military by 7%. You're going to add billions more to the defense budget that we don't actually need. Look, healthcare didn't do that. Medicare didn't do that. You guys did that. You blew up the budget. But see, of course, that's their game, right? Run up gigantic deficits when you're in charge. And when Democrats get in charge, suddenly austerity. They scream for austerity. And of course, the centrist Democrats are like, oh yes, we must cut entitlements. We must cut all these things. We have to. We don't have a choice. We're going broke. It's like we have two corporate right-wing parties in America. I know, strange. But yeah, when Democrats are in power, suddenly deficits matter. But now, Republicans say, deficits, they don't matter. We're just going to run it up. This is old politics, right? All this is an effort to serve the donors who love these giant tax cuts. Now, what's interesting here is while Paul Ryan is now pushing for these tax cuts, not all Republicans are saying that they're on board. And this is very interesting. According to the Washington Post, Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell has all but ruled out the idea, saying publicly that he doesn't expect to see welfare and entitlement changes on the agenda next year, particularly if it's done in a party-line manner. He said, quote, the sensitivity in entitlements is such that you almost have to have bipartisan agreement in order to achieve a result. Now, interestingly enough, back when, during the Obama administration, during some of the debt ceiling fights, President Obama and some of the corporate Democrats, they actually did consider doing a cut to Social Security. They were considering doing a changed CPI, which would have been an effective cut in the growth of Social Security benefits over the years. It would actually have less generous benefit raises every year, which the benefit raises of Social Security right now are actually incredibly modest. So it's not that much. And again, Social Security doesn't even add to the deficit at all whatsoever. But of course, they don't care about that. They want to continue to lie about Social Security and Medicare and saying, oh, no, it contributes to the debt and the deficit. It does not. Now, you might think on McConnell, his statements, to think, oh, God, thank God we're safe, right? Now, notice he hasn't said that he's against cutting it. He's just saying that, for one, it's got to be bipartisan, so you're going to get some corporate Democrats on your side, and also it's not going to be during the 2018 midterms, because to do so would be political suicide. Now, again, there are corporate Democrats that are thinking about supporting these cuts, but again, it is actually politically risky, as the Post goes on to explain. Other key Republicans are clearly loath to turn to such a sharply partisan pursuit after grueling fights over Obamacare and taxes. For example, Shelley Moore Capito, a swing vote during the Obamacare repeal fight this summer, quickly changed the subject when asked about Ryan's entitlement reform push. Quote, well, I'd like to see us pivot to infrastructure. We've talked about it all year. The president talked about it. I think it could be a bipartisan exercise. I would certainly hope so. The clash illustrates the dilemma that congressional GOP leaders face early next year. How to sketch out an election year agenda that unifies House and Senate Republicans and satisfies the conservative base without further risking their already imperiled majorities. Now, why would entitlement reform be a problem with Republicans? I mean, their views are monstrous, right? No, actually, a lot of Republicans love entitlements, as long as they're getting them. Let's take Medicaid, for example. 74% of Americans, according to a Kaiser Family Foundation poll, actually have a very positive view of Medicaid. Now, that includes 61% of Republicans. Now, it's not going to be a surprise that a lot of the people who are on Medicaid are poor white people living in rural areas that receive Medicaid. So, of course, they're going to be in favor of that program. 59% of Republicans think Medicaid works well in their own states. 54% of Republicans say do not touch Medicaid spending. And the rest are evenly split between increasing spending and decreasing spending, both 22% respectively. So Republicans are going to have a pretty hard time justifying cuts to Medicaid. That's Republican politicians. Medicare, also incredibly popular, more so even than Medicaid. And in total, Medicare spending took up 15% of total spending in 2016 and is projected to only rise to about 17.5% by 2027. That is, of course, related to a lot of the boomers retiring who vote primarily for Republicans. So that's why you see Republicans out there saying, do not touch my Medicare. Get your government, your grubby government hands off my Medicare, which always makes me laugh. Because it's a government program. But anyway, now, I know Republican politicians are always, they're going to look and they're going to lie, basically, look you straight in the eye and tell you, no, you don't understand. We can't afford it anymore. Look at all the money we spent on Medicare. We can't afford it, right? We're going to have to cut it. And here's McConnell saying, wait a minute, hold on. We've got an election coming. We cannot cut this incredibly popular program. Let's take it easy. Let's take it easy. Now, again, I'm not saying Mitch McConnell is suddenly a defender of Medicare, but right now he is the consummate establishment politician, and the establishment right now is highly in favor of Medicare, Social Security. Why? It's because most Americans are in favor of Medicare, Social Security, and Medicaid. And if you go against that, you are likely to not win your election. Those are the sacred cows, and you cannot touch those cows. So everything is carefully weighted in the politics and how it will affect control of the chamber and re-election. That's what Mitch McConnell's thinking about. He's got to weigh that with the desires of their donors, which is basically to cut taxes. And he's already done that. We already passed those gigantic tax cuts, so the donors don't really care what they're going to do with Medicaid, Medicare, and Social Security. Now, this is important here because, as the Post explains, they no longer have the numbers to do this. With Democratic opposition to welfare and entitlement changes all but certain, Republicans would have to use powerful reconciliation procedures that can evade a Senate filibuster. But that would require nearly complete unity among Republicans on a joint House-Senate budget and on what controversial policy modifications to make. John Cornyn said, quote, "All you have to do is the math. Unless it's bipartisan, then you're talking about reconciliation, which means you have to pass a budget, you have to get reconciliation instructions, and you have to get 51 Republicans all to vote for it. That is a pretty steep hill to climb." Now, this is much different than what they did to get taxes done, right? Every Republican was going to vote to cut taxes for their donors, right? That's what the Republican Party does. They serve their donors. That's why they exist. Their sole reason for existence is to serve the donors, is to cut their taxes, okay? Now, cutting Medicare, that is actually going to be probably a lot worse than the fight over the ACA. It's actually a much harder sell. Now, you've got the Freedom Caucus out there, which pretty much hates Medicare and Medicaid and everything that actually helps regular working people, saying, absolutely, let's cut it. We're on board. I hate those freeloaders that paid into the system. I want their money, and I want old people to eat cat food. I don't care. Ryan's conference bellowed when Congress temporarily raised the debt ceiling in September without any corresponding spending cuts, and conservatives have been pressing Ryan ever since to call up legislation to reduce the biggest drivers of the national debt, which they falsely attribute to Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security. In order to win votes for the budget in late October that paved the way for the tax overhaul, Paul Ryan promised leaders of the Republican Study Committee to vote sometime next year on deficit reduction legislation, which would include cutting entitlements. Republicans since then have discussed enacting work requirements for food stamps and other programs for the poor, as well as Medicare changes to curb spending. Paul Ryan said on CBS This Morning recently, "We have to address entitlements, otherwise we can't really get a handle on our future debt." He also singled out programs for low-income people, saying, quote, "We right now are trapping people in poverty, and it's basically trapping people on welfare programs, which prevents them from hitting their potential and getting them into the workforce." So Paul Ryan, unsurprisingly, he is one of those monsters that wants to eliminate these programs. But there are enough Republicans, I think, just like in the ACA fight, that actually will not go for cutting Medicare, at least for now. Again, super popular. Even Mike Huckabee and Donald Trump argued over who came up with the promise to not cut Medicare and Social Security first. Now, that said, do you think Trump actually gives a shit about Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security? No, of course not. He actually doesn't really care about those programs. He's never going to deal with those programs. And he's not going to be worried about people on those programs unless they vote for him, unless he gets something out of it. So, but nonetheless, there are a lot of congressional Republicans that are worried about these programs because they actually want to get reelected. In fact, even some of Ryan's rank and file are wary of tackling entitlements. Hillary Clinton cared about 24 GOP-held swing districts back in 2016, and with evidence of a Democratic wave already building political rights, centrist Republicans fear cuts to programs that support the most vulnerable could cost them their seats. When asked about entitlement reform, several House GOP moderates responded that they would prefer to tackle infrastructure, as did Collins in the Senate. Now, before you think you're safe, let me add this. The votes likely are there in the House to pass cuts or changes to food stamps, disability, and even Medicare and Social Security, and Ryan could try to move entitlement reform through the House to exert pressure on the Senate to take up the issue. Ryan could also get the support of President Trump, who has no moral fiber at all and does not actually care. There are GOP senators who are fine or even excited about taking up an overhaul of welfare programs. One is Senator Orrin Hatch, who actually will be retiring at the end of the year. Now, he's not only did Hatch say that he would be fine with cutting entitlements, Jeff Flake, also retiring at the end of the year, saying, or at the end of his term, saying, quote, "I'd love it. That's a heavy lift, particularly after the tax bill, but we know we've got to rein in these programs in order to make them sustainable." So, look, all of this, I don't quite know what to make of it, other than maybe you should be nervous, since there might not be enough moderates left by the time that they actually take on these so-called entitlements. So like it or not, win or not, they're still coming for your Social Security. And if we don't fight back by actually electing real progressives to defend it, then they're actually going to get it. Hey everybody, thanks for watching this video. If you want to see more like this, please hit the subscribe button below. And if you want to support truly independent progressive media, please consider becoming a patron at patreon.com/TYTNation.